Legends tell of a vast underground world and the countless treasures that lie in store for worthy... Oh, hello there! I didn't see you come in with your director and camera crew and lighting equipment. Have a seat. My name is Dave Kosak, and I'm the lead mission designer for Hearthstone. In more technical terms, that means I make stuff up. By now, you've probably heard about how the new single-player dungeon run works in Kobolds and Catacombs. You'll fight a series of bosses of escalating difficulty. As you descend deeper into the dungeon, you'll loot cards and powerful treasures to add to your deck. It's a whole new way to play Hearthstone. It's free for everyone, and no deck is required to get started. You can check out the blog for more details. But today, because it's just us, I wanted to tell you some stories about the development of the dungeon run. First up, treasures. Treasures are awesome. These are unique cards that are only playable in the single-player dungeon run. Treasures let us do crazy things we'd never do in multiplayer. We wanted treasures to set the tone for your entire game. These are big decisions that impact your entire deck. Now, some of these treasures are bonkers by design, and some of them are bonkers by accident. One great example is the Cloak of Invisibility. Here's how it looks now, but it wasn't supposed to work this way. Originally, the cloak would give all your minions stealth when they came into play, and the stealth would behave normally. Except, when we implemented it, it was buggy. Your minions had stealth, all right. Permanent stealth, even after attacking. Now, this was ridiculous. Ridiculously fun. I could hear one of our mission designers, Paul Nguyen, just cackling at his desk. You always know Paul is onto something when you could hear him laughing. And so we decided to keep the bugged version of the treasure because it was so much fun to play. Now, you'd think that permanent stealth for all your minions is overpowered. And it is! But it's not without drawbacks. The boss has no other target on the board but you. You're completely exposed, and there's nothing you can do about it. When you run a dungeon with the Cloak of Invisibility, it's like playing a totally different game. It forces you to build a deck that can take advantage of how incredible it is, but also compensate for its weakness. In that respect, the Cloak of Invisibility was the perfect treasure. It changes the way you play and every decision you make for the rest of the run. That's what makes the dungeon run so exciting and so replayable. No two runs are the same. Let's talk about encounters. There are 48 different encounters in the dungeon run, and you never know which ones you'll run into. Early on, we had this idea that maybe you can pick a path through the dungeon, choosing which wings to explore, and each wing would have different groups of bosses connected thematically. You can still see remnants of this in the final encounter design because there's lots of families of encounters, like furbolgs. These are these big bear creatures. We've got a lot of furbolgs in the dungeon. We like furbolgs because they can cast spells and talk, so you can have a lot of fun fights and fun VO. You'll find other groups of bosses as well. You know, we've got a few trogs, we've got some murlocs, but let's talk about this group, trolls.
Jinzo got big plans for you.
First up is Battle Crier Jinzo. His hero power passively doubles all the battle cries in the game. So if you have a deck that can take advantage of this, you're in great shape, but either way, you have to deal with his strategy. His troll neighbor is Spirit Speaker Azun.
I speak to the dead. Sarat? Sarat.
This fight is similar, but now all of your death rattles trigger twice. For everybody, you might be able to use that to your advantage. In the Kobolds and Catacombs backstory, we have the idea that the kobolds are digging everywhere, and they run into all sorts of creatures. So to that end, there is a kobold who lives with the trolls, and he figured out how to work a little troll mojo of his own. His name is Voodoo Master Vex.
Me do voodoo too.
He shares the same mechanics with the trolls he's trying to emulate, but he goes big. All battle cries and all death rattles for both players trigger twice. This fight is nuts. Now there's a story behind this fight too. Originally, Voodoo Master Vex had an optimized deck, and it was a tough fight. Like way too tough. He was slaughtering our playtesters. So the mission team got together and we thought, that doesn't feel very kobold. So we went back to the drawing board, and instead of optimizing his deck to win, we optimized it with one goal in mind: maximum kobold chaos. Well, now the fight feels like a fight against a voodoo kobold. I mean, it's still hard, but in addition, it's just silly. It's just silly fun. Silly fun is a pretty good way to describe the kobolds in general. And that brings me to the big cheese, the head rat, the becandled king of the kobolds, King Togwaggle.
Who is daring to come for kobold treasures? Sword swinger? Sparkle flinger?
King Togwaggle acts as your host for the dungeon run, and he's got some strong opinions. He'll offer you helpful advice.
Invisibleness cloak. I keep losing it. It's invisible.
He'll tell you useful strategies for the different bosses.
Beware the mother gloop, the gloop from which all other gloop is glopped.
The Kobold King is one of the 5 final bosses in the dungeon, where he's got a unique game plan befitting his regalness and koboldry. I'll let you discover that fight on your own if you can make it to the bottom of the dungeon. So far, I've only shown you cards you'll find only in the dungeon run, but what about collectible cards? I didn't want this video to end without showing you something that you can put in your own deck. Ladies and gentlemen, King Togwaggle. The greedy Kobold King wants to get a hold of your opponent's deck, so he just takes it. When you play this card, you'll swap decks with your opponent. If they want it back, they'll have to buy it back, which costs a king's ransom, or about 5 mana. Here's what it looks like in-game.
We be taking this now. His kobold way.
This card completely dunks your opponent's deck. Actually, for that matter, it dunks your own deck as well. It's a real deck dunker. I can't think of a more koboldy card to play. Well, that's all the time I have for today, so until next time, you no take candle!